وصلاة ربي وسلامه ورحمته وبركاته على رسوله الأمين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. We continue in Bab ما جاء في الكهان ونحوهم. We finished that chapter on this night of Friday according to the Gregorian calendar, but on the Islamic calendar this is technically Saturday night. The Islamic calendar starts the new day, technically, after Maghrib. Even though, according to the Gregorian calendars, November the 8th, 6:54 p.m., November the 8th, the year 2019, according to the Gregorian calendar, which agrees on the Islamic calendar, the night of the 11th. The night of the 11th, the month of Rabi' al-Awwal, the year 1441 after the hijrah of Mustafa alayhi salatu wassalam. We finalized the chapter which comes, as it says, Bab ma ja'a fil kuhani wa nahwihim, the chapter which comes in those, or what is pertaining to those who claim to have knowledge of the unseen, or those who perform predictions, who predict and try to read minds, and all the different meanings that we cover. We said last class, and this is just before we start the new one, all these chapters that we covered, all of them are pertaining to what come or what preceded in the other chapters about magic, about what is pertaining to magic. And these chapters are given explicit details of magic and what it breaks down or what it branches off in, especially in regards to all these different elements or details that we gave from the previous lessons. You'll find, Ya Ma'ashar al-Ikhwa, we were discussing especially the difference between al-Arraf or al-Kahin. As I wanted to cover that quickly before we move on. We said that the word al-Arraf, if it's mentioned by itself in the context, then Kahin falls into it. Al-Arraf, if it's mentioned by itself in the context, for example, what you find in the chapter, the first hadith of the chapter, you find that the Prophet ﷺ, that was mentioned on the authority of some of his wives, as it says, who goes to an Arraf. So we said Arraf was mentioned without the word what? Kahin. That's what you notice. Right. Just because Kahin was not mentioned here in this narration does not mean it doesn't apply to a Kahin, because we said the word Arraf, if it's mentioned alone, then what? Kahin goes into it, or merges with it. The Kahin merges with the meaning of an Arraf. And the other example we gave, if you looked at the next narration, whoever comes to a Kahin. So Arraf wasn't mentioned. So Kahin was just mentioned alone in the context, if you look in your books. Taib, Arraf, is it applicable to Arraf? Yes, it is. Because Kahin, also, if it's mentioned alone in the context, similar to what we see here, then Arraf falls into it. Right. Then you have narrations where both were mentioned at the same time. Arraf and Kahin. Right, everyone? Arraf and Kahin was mentioned. Right. This is where we wanted to now say they separate in this context, and they individually take their own meaning. Right, everyone? Isn't that when we mentioned or not? So we said, if you look at the Masail, especially in regards to what Imam al-Baghawi that he mentioned said about the meaning of al-Arraf. So based upon what we said, where both words were mentioned in one context, they both separate and take their own meaning. But here, you notice Imam al-Baghawi, what did he mention to say? Al-Arraf alladhi yadda'i ma'rifat al-umur بمقدمات يستدل بها على المسروق ومكان الضالة ونحو ذلك. Imam al-Baghawi said the meaning of al-Arraf is the one who claims the knowledge of affairs. He claimed the knowledge of affairs by muqaddimat. By muqaddimat. By different signs that he uses. بمعرفة الأمور بمقدمات. Meaning certain things that already took place before. And what is used as an evidence to locate something stolen or the place where something was lost or misplaced or anything similar to that. So based upon what Imam al-Baghawi is mentioning here, he's saying that the meaning of al-Arraf is the one who claims to have knowledge of the unseen, the one who claims to have knowledge of affairs by things that have already passed. Something that already happened in the past. And he's trying to now find it, what was either misplaced or stolen or what have you. Then it was said about al-Kahin. So it said the Kahin is the one who informs about affairs of the unseen and about affairs of the unseen in the future. He informs about affairs of the unseen or events that will take place in the future. And it was also said, if you look in your books, the one who informs of what is in the mind. The one who informs of what is in the mind. يُخْبِرُ عَمَّا فِي الضَّمِيرِ. He informs of what is in the mind. Fine. This is what Imam al-Baghawi that he mentioned. He said, so based upon what was mentioned, the person who claims to have knowledge of what Imam al-Baghawi is mentioning here, he said that it's basically is comprehensive for the one who claims to have knowledge of the future and something of the past, especially something that was stolen. And the person now wants to know where it's located, meaning something that was stolen, that they will use the jinn or what have you to locate it, or something misplaced to the end of it. That's based upon what Imam al-Baghawi that he mentioned. Also, we said Kahin is the one who informs about affairs of the unseen in the future. Then we mentioned about the third, the one who informs about what is in the mind of an individual. Just to sum up everything so I can keep it concise because I don't want anybody to get confused. Anybody now that claims knowledge of affairs, especially by muqaddimat. Muqaddimat, meaning that they utilize, of course, they could use the jinn. Or they try to now so-called read minds by certain affairs, for example, of what they can read the mind of a person. I feel inside what I think, as if that person still is claiming that they have knowledge of the what? The unseen. So here, in the past, what took place with Al-Arraf, he's trying to locate, based upon what Imam al-Baghawi says, something that already took place in the past. So now they want to look forward, looking for a location of it, just something in the future now. So they will utilize the jinn, some of them. Based upon what Shaykh al-Islam, which we're going to read in a minute, we'll get to that in a second. So Al-Arraf, something that took place in the past, something was stolen, took place in the past. So now in the future we're trying to locate it, or what have you. Then you have the Kahin that they say that he just informs of what takes place in the future. Then you have another person who just reads the minds of people. Then it says, Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah says, the word Arraf is a name for a Kahin, and an astrologer, and a person who draws lines on the ground, or they utilize the ground to tell the future or what have you. The one who speaks about the knowledge of these affairs by these methods, what we mentioned. Just to sum up everything, these are all definitions you'll find that Al-Ilm gave in the past of the meaning of these words. Al-Arraf. Al-Arraf, mentioned by itself, As I mentioned last class, I don't know if you guys wrote this down. Y'all should have wrote this down. Maybe a couple of classes ago, I mentioned it said, sometimes the arraf could be used for a person to claim to have knowledge of the unseen, no doubt. Sometimes it could be used for a person, let's just say, for example, he comes and they ask him to do certain things with birds or what have you, or evil omens, not necessarily so-called using the jinn. But he might use it to tell what? Certain things and events of happening based upon what directions the birds flew in or what directions the birds go in. Not necessarily in this particular instance using the jinn, but him saying that certain things are going to happen based upon the position of the birds or based upon the position of certain stones or certain rocks or certain shells that was extracted from the sea. Extract it, throw it on the ground, and based upon its position, predicting that this is going to take place or that is going to take place in your life. So here in this instance, he's not necessarily using the shayateen here, but he's claiming to have a fair knowledge of certain affairs, which in this case is shirk. It's still polytheism. It's still polytheism, even though in this particular instance he's not using the jinn. But if he's using the jinn, then that's something even more what? That's even worse. So these affairs are pertaining to shirk, and of course they're pertaining to now the jinn is being utilized, then that's something of a higher magnitude, on a higher scale. But all these affairs are either polytheism or the absolute disbelief if the shayateen is being used, and that all goes back to the meaning of arraf. That all goes to the meaning of arraf, and arraf doesn't necessarily use the shayateen all the time. He just used certain things, whether it be rocks, trees, or seashells from the sea, extracts them, throws them on the ground, or he draws lines. Not all the time using the shayateen, but saying based upon this direction or based upon this shell being this, what I was taught is that this is going to happen in your life. At the end of the day, whether or not he uses the shaitan or not, it's still considered what? It's still considered either shirk or it's considered what? Kufr, by disbelief by way of usage of the what? The shayateen. Now the kahin informs of what takes place in the future. And the kahin does use the shayateen. He receives inspiration from them and he informs him of what is going to take place. As we talked about last class in regards to all these people, all of them are from Ahlul Batil, from the people of falsehood. They utilize methods and corrupted methods of evil to mislead the people and to gain their trustworthiness in them, their reliability in what they tell them. And this is what we mentioned last class. That the shayateen, in which Ibn al-Qayyim, and I'll read it quickly what he says. He says, من اشتهر بإحسان الزجر عندهم سموه عائفا or عرافا. The one who's become famous that بإحسان الزجر, meaning that he's good at so-called restraining birds or letting them go. During this time they were called the arraf. He said what is intended is people that they claim to have knowledge of something, of affairs pertaining to the unseen. He says وإما داخل في اسم الكاهن وإما مشارك له في المعنى فيلحق به. This is all what we already talked about. We don't need to reiterate it. I just wanted to read it for the benefit of what Ibn al-Qayyim mentioned. He says, those who claim to have knowledge of certain affairs which pertain to the unseen, he said, whereas the name Arraf, that it does fall into the name Kahin. He says, or that he shares in the meaning. So he will be joined along with him. He says, ذلك أن إصابة المخبر ببعض الأمور الغائبة في بعض الأحيان يكون بالكشف ومنهم ما هو من الشياطين ويكون بالفأل والزجر والطيرة وفي بعض الأحيان والضرب بالحصى والخطف في الأرض والتنجيم والكهانة والسحر. So he's using all these different types of examples. He says either that you'll find that the person who's informing that he might be correct in some affairs which are unseen in certain times, and he will utilize something called kashf, what has been revealed to me or what has been so-called some type of vision or premonition. And from them is from the shayateen. He says, and it could be by what they call fa'al. A fa'al is like a good omen, in which we'll talk about inshallah. Or by releasing certain things into the sky. And not only just releasing birds, it could be releasing any type of animal. Or it could be by evil omens, or people striking the rocks on the ground, or drawing a line on the ground, or astrology by the stars, or predictions based upon the stars, or magic. All these affairs were from the sciences of Jahiliyyah, pre-Islamic ignorance, which the Prophet ﷺ highly prohibited. And when we say Jahiliyyah, we say, what we mean by that is everything that is not from following the messengers, alayhimus salatu wassalam, such as the philosophers, or such as those who claim to have knowledge of the unseen from the sorcerers, or the fortune tellers, or soothsayers, or the so-called astrologers, or astrologists. All this were from the Jahiliyyat al-Arab, which came before the mission of the Prophet ﷺ. And these type of so-called sciences were for people in which they had in actuality no true knowledge, especially those who oppose what the messengers came with. For verily all these affairs, all of them were either called a kahin or arraf, or both of them fall under the same meaning. If the one, as we talked about, who believes in them, then of course then the warning will fall upon them. If they believe in them and receive their news, even asking them and accepting, especially accepting what they say. For verily those who inherited these sciences from these type of people, of course, they were the people who also claimed to have knowledge of the unseen, in which we know is from the rububiyyah of Allah, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only encompasses its knowledge of. And those who claim to have knowledge other than that, or they share in Allah with that characteristic of the rububiyyah of Allah, which is claimed to have knowledge of the unseen, then they are from the awliya al-shaytan. Even though they might call it karama. Notice that they use the word karama because that is what the Sufis use these days. As you'll find from their so-called Mashayikh al-Turuq, as they call them, that they claim to have knowledge of the unseen. Claiming to have knowledge of the unseen, and rather they will call it karama. Karama. In which you'll find that those who are so-called from the mystic ways of Sufism that they claim. So it's not just affairs of people we think of times of old, rather it's from the Sufis of these modern day times who claim to have knowledge of the unseen. And they conduct in this existence. And they also call them awliya or wali. And no doubt that the one who claims what they call walaya, that they're wali, and they will now try to utilize as some evidence of what they inform of some of the affairs of the unseen. And if he's able to do that, they claim he's from the awliya of Allah, but however he is from the awliya of the shaitan. He's from the awliya of the shaitan. For verily the word karama is from those affairs in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed to take place at the hands of a servant of Allah who was truly taqi, meaning that he had a correct belief system first. A correct belief system. And he also had the correct what? Methodology. And his creed was sound in every aspect. So you'll find here that this is to affirm that karamat is from the religion. Karamat is from the religion of Islam. You'll find that Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah wrote a whole chapter on it in Al-Aqidat al-Wasitiyya. It's in it. It's in Al-Aqidat al-Wasitiyya, the chapter of Karamat al-Awliya. That's what the name of the chapter is. The Karamat of those who are truly the awliya of Allah. And he gave the conditions for it. But these type of people, in which we're discussing now, claim to have knowledge of the unseen. These people are not the awliya of Allah because no one, firstly from the Salaf, no one never called themselves wali or awliya of Allah. That's something that the Sufis brought. And just the mere title of calling yourself a wali is enough to show how ignorant you are. If you was to call yourself the awliya from Allah or the wali of Allah or the mawla of Allah. Because we know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in his book, وَلَا تُزَكُّوا أَنفُسَكُمْ هُوَ أَعْلَمُ بِمَنِ اتَّقَى. Do not praise yourselves. Do not praise yourselves. So just the mere name of calling yourself a wali is a praise. You never know anyone from the Salaf of the past who's on a high level of iman that would claim that they're wali of Allah, saying, I'm a wali. I am a wali. You'll never find it. You'll never find, and that is so-called praising yourself. If you call yourself a wali, I'm a wali of Allah, ask me. I'm a wali of Allah, I can show you and I can display to you what they call karamat. Things out of the ordinary that can happen at my hands because I'm a wali. You'll find from the Sufis that actually give themselves this title. Well, that in itself is enough to know the falsehood they're upon and the invalidity of their claim. Because none of the Salaf claimed that they were what? To say, I am a wali of Allah. But the Sufis do that. So-and-so is a wali. So-and-so is from the awliya. So-and-so is a mawla. Mawla fulan. That in itself, just the mere title, is enough for you to know it's what? It's falsehood. What they're upon of what? A falsehood. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? This you'll find within Sufism. This is what they call themselves. So-and-so is a wali. Or mawla. Ask mawla so-and-so. But we know that karamat, they do take place either by the way of dua, for those who have the correct belief system, or from, for example, in the past what happened for those who did righteous actions. But however, they totally admitted and showed that they had no type of what? They had no type of power over the affair. It did not happen because of them. Rather, it happened because of Allah Ta'ala. In contrast to those who are upon Sufism or upon mysticism, you'll find that he's from the awliya of Allah. Rather, this happened because of me, and it happened because I'm a wali of Allah, and it happened in my hands because I have such and such status with Allah, and some of them even claim that they can bypass the Sharia of Muhammad ﷺ, and they have reached the level directly to Allah without utilizing the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. You'll find that from the Sufis who are misguided, who reach the so-called level, where they say that that Islam breaks down to two categories. You have Sharia and you have Haqiqah. You have Sharia and you have Haqiqah. They say the Sharia is only for the common folk, from the Muslimun. The Sharia is only for the common folk. هذا لكم لعامة الناس. That's only for you. But those who are special, they are from the awliya of Allah, as they say, then we're not in need of the Sharia. Rather, we reached another level which is higher than the Sharia, which is called the Haqiqah, which is called the true reality, or the truth, or if you want to say the true reality. We've reached that level where we can bypass the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and we receive direct revelation directly from Allah. We're directly connected with Allah. Directly. Without passing by the Sharia of Muhammad ﷺ. All these are people, ya ma'ashal ikhwa, who the shaitan has deluded. And there are people who now have drawn close to the shaitan, and they have become from the awliya of the shayateen. They come from the awliya of the shayateen, and they're not from the awliya ar-Rahman. Especially in affairs in which you'll find that the shaitan loves for those people to draw close to him by, such as, for example, leaving off wudu and praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without any wudu. You don't need wudu anymore. You reach the level of the true reality. You don't, to the point where we know that some of them say that they do not have to even pray anymore. The 5 prayers have been raised and lifted off of you. You've now reached the level of Allah. You've bypassed the Sharia of Muhammad, and you obtained the level of Allah Ta'ala. And that's the reason why the majority of them are upon the belief of what they call wahdatul wujud. Majority of the Sufis are upon the belief system called wahdatul wujud, where the creation is unified with Allah, and Allah is unified with the creation. So based upon that, all the duties of Islam have been removed from me. These people are truly awliya of the shayateen. Then you'll find from the Sufis who claim to have knowledge of the unseen. And they will tell their so-called murid of certain affairs that will take place. And these are similar to what? The soothsayers and fortune tellers and all of those who have what? So-called fell into their portion of attaining magic and being involved in these type of matters. So you'll find that it says about the shayateen that they also lie along with it 100 lies. And it will bring these lies in order for what? For the kahin, or the one who claims to have knowledge of the unseen, so he can delude the people and thinking that he is someone that is truthful. But in actuality, he's a true liar, even though he might have said something of the truth. And we know that every person قد يصدق الكذاب, that a person who's a habitual liar might tell the truth sometimes. Isn't it not right? That certain about someone who's a habitual liar sometimes can what? Tell the truth. And likewise the opposite. Even a person who's known for being truthful can sometimes, or one time, fall into a what? Into a lie. But that's not something he does habitually, even though it's all wrong. But the person who's a kadhab, such as the shayateen, as we know what happened to Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu. But the Prophet ﷺ said to him at the end, صَدَّقَ وَهُوَ كَذُوب. He told the truth, but he's a habitual what? He's a habitual liar. He's told you the truth about Ayatul Kursi, but he's a habitual what? He's a habitual liar. Not only he's a liar, he's a habitual liar. He's a kadhab. Kadhub is also sigha mubalagha. The word kadhub or fa'ul is also sigha mubalagha. Something that is a person's habit, constantly doing it, consistently. So that what we say in regards to these people, all these people from the Arraf, Kahin, to the end of them, all of them are going to bring some type of truth in order to what? Fool you. In order for you to what? For you to gain their trust. Then as a result of it, they lead you astray. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? And we said that's similar to the people of Batil in general. A lot of them these days take the same exact method. All of them are going to come with something of the truth in order for what? For you to gain their trust, or for you to gain their love, or gain their respect, and gain your respect and your reverence for them, and then they mislead you. But all of them come, if not all of them, come with something of the truth in order to fool you by. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? Gee. We also talked about the word Abu Jad. We already finished that. We talked about the meaning of the word Abu Jad and what is permissible from it and what is not. Right, everyone? We talked about that, right? He said that Abu Jad, just to summarize it as quick as possible. Abu Jad is a type of, it's still used to this day amongst the Arab, and it's used amongst certain people in certain countries, where they will bring letters, and sometimes a letter will mean a certain number. Certain letters will mean certain numbers. It's kind of like, almost like I said, for lack of better words, like a Morse code. Or it could be a science of a knowledge, where in order for them to use a certain number, they would bring letters in a certain form, and it would mean certain type of what? Numbers. If you was to understand the actual language that they're using, or what this number or this letter means this number, or this letter means that number, to the end of it. We said that was permissible. There's nothing wrong with that. As long as the person does not what? Utilize this type of way to look into the stars and predict certain things from happening. Meaning it has to be fully disconnected with affairs that pertain to the unseen. But if it's pertaining to the affairs of the unseen, what they call Abu Jad, where it utilizes what they call numerology for using words or numbers or words, and then connecting them with affairs that's pertaining to the stars, this is what's impermissible, and this is what we're talking about in regards to what is unlawful in numerology. That is affairs of kufr, and that is the affairs of what we're speaking about right now, which is highly prohibited. But the affair what is permissible is, like we said, when we talked about Sheikh Abdurrahman al-Sa'di, even put in the poetry, where he talked about, for example, in that poetry where he said, وَقَوْلُ الْمُنِيبِ اغْفِرْ لَنَا وَالشَّهْرُ فِي شَوَّالِ يَا رَبُّ تَقَبَّلْ سَعْيَنَا. Based upon the line in the poetry, if a person understood what he was trying to say, he was trying to say that a certain letters in this particular sentence that it means, for example, 1,000, the year 1,362. If you was to understand the language of the certain letters that mean certain numbers. Is it kind of understood what I'm trying to say, everyone? I'll say it again. Let me for everyone repeat. It's what you call, for example, where a person uses letters in order to count or calculate certain sentences. For example, I talked about this last class. For example, what we call, even with the phones, or Morse code. It's not that exactly, but it kind of give you a rough meaning. Back in the day, we used to use Morse code. We used to press buttons, and if you understood the code, certain presses mean certain letters. You understood, everyone? In regards now, but this is slightly different. It's the opposite. They had some of the same method, where they would use letters, but they could mean certain numbers. Is it clear what I'm saying? Is it clear? Here, for example, even Sheikh Abdurrahman Sa'di used a poetry. He said, جد بالرضا واعظ المنى من ساعد في ذا البنى تاريخه حين انتهى قول المنيب اغفر لنا والشهر في شواليا ربي تقبل سعينا. So it says here, it was talking about, for example, the year that the masjid, or a certain masjid was the date it was actually established. He put in the poetry, he said, قول المنيب اغفر لنا. The word اغفر لنا, if you was to count according to the sentences, you understood what they were trying to say. He used that certain type of letters in order to form a certain number. 1,362. But you would have to understand the actual language that they were counting. You have to learn it to understand what they were trying to say. But that's what basically he's mentioned. You'll find that they call it abjadiyya. Basically, it's the short. It's kind of like a. What do you call it? No, not a code. What do you call it when a person? When you call now a person, that's a kunya. Oh, that's a laqab. Just keep it for now. What they call abajad, they call it the certain language. They'll put the words together. Call it abjadiyya. Instead of calling Abu Jad, they call it abjadiyya. That's what I was looking for. The acronym. So that's what they basically use it now. They call it abjadiyya, which is kind of like an acronym. Well, abjadiyya was basically what we're talking about right now. That was permissible. There's nothing wrong with that. Rather, you'll find Sheikh Ubay said it's still used to this day, where people are putting a certain poetry in a certain type of sentences, and based upon it, if you were able to understand, they would calculate and understood numbers from the letters. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? Fine. The thing that's impermissible for what we're speaking about is what? What we're talking about is utilizing numerology for numbers and then looking to the stars, gathering them together, and then predicting certain events of occurring based upon it. That is what we're talking about. That is impermissible. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? G. Is it clear? G. Right, let's do the next chapter. Another chapter that's pertaining to magic. It says, Bab ma ja'a fi nushra. Bab ma ja'a fi nushra. The chapter which comes in, or what is pertaining to the affair, what they call nushra. Nushra. Right, so read the narrations on the authority of Jabir ibn Abdullah. أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال وسئل عن النشرة قال هي من عمل الشيطان رواه أحمد بسند جيد وأبو داود قال سئل أحمد عنها يهديكم الله ويصلح بالكم فقال ابن مسعود يكره هذا كله وفي البخاري عن قتادة قلت لابن المسيب رجل به طب أو يؤخذ عن امرأته. So it's not يؤخذ بتشديد الخاء يؤخذ عن امرأته أن يحل عنه أو ينشر قال لا بأس به إنما يريدون به الإصلاح فأما ما ينفع فلم ينهى عنه. طيب. So the chapter which comes in what they call Nushra, that the Prophet ﷺ was asked about it, he said it is from the acts of shaitan. So what was asked about this concerning Nushra is from the acts of shaitan, meaning what was used in Jahiliyyah. What was used in Jahiliyyah. What was the Jahiliyyah practice, not the practice in Islam. First, we have to cover what is the meaning of Nushra. What is the meaning of Nushra? The word Nushra, ya ma'ashal ikhwa, comes from, or the meaning of Nushra is yunashar or nushira yunasharu, tanshira, which means exactly what Ibn Qayyim mentioned. It says removing magic from using another magic. The removal of magic from a one who's been afflicted with magic, of course, by using magic. That's the meaning of Nushra. Nushra is hallu sihr an al-mashur, removing magic from the one who's been afflicted with magic. Is it clear what I'm saying? So that's the meaning of Nushra. So it's a type of treatment. It's a type of treatment, it's a type of treatment or incantation that could be used, inshallah, we'll talk about it, for the one who thinks that one is being or has been afflicted by either magic or by touch of the jinn or the shaitan. So one who's been afflicted with magic or the jinn or the shaitan, treating them by magic is impermissible. Right. We'll get into, inshallah, the meaning of whether or not, if you was to go to the magician and ask him to remove your magic, is that permissible or not? Was it be commanded to release the magic from the one he's afflicted or the one he has done magic upon? We'll talk about that in a minute. The actual magician himself, go to him and say, listen, you afflicted so-and-so with magic. Take that same spell and release it. Or remove it. Or destroy it. We'll talk about that in a minute. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? Right. So that's basically what Nushra is. It's a type of ilaj. It's a type of treatment. It's a type of ilaj for the one, like we said, that we think more than likely they've been what? Afflicted with either magic or they've been touched by the jinn or the shaitan. They've been touched by the jinn or the shaitan. We know in the hadith which comes in Bukhari, we talked about this a couple of chapters ago, that the Prophet ﷺ, by the permission of Allah, bi'idhnillah al-qadari, not al-shar'i al-qadari, that the Prophet ﷺ was afflicted with magic. He was afflicted by magic by the Yahudi, named Labid ibn al-A'sa, who's the starter of, if not majority of the deviant sects of Islam. Rather, he's to start the Jahmiyyah. Labid ibn al-A'sa is the one who started the firqah called the Jahmiyyah, where all the deviant sects, especially in the aspect of Bab al-Asma wa Sifat, where they branched off from the Jahmiyyah, and the Jahmiyyah returns back to Labid ibn al-A'sa. As we discussed this last class, right everyone? Maybe about a month ago. Right, we talked about that hadith of Bukhari, where the Prophet ﷺ, that Jew had did magic upon him and he was affected by it. The Prophet ﷺ, those two angels came. One time it was an angel that sat at the front of his head and an angel at his feet. And there's another time where Jibreel actually came to the Messenger of Allah and did ruqyah. He did an incantation upon the Prophet ﷺ. It's another occasion. So you have one occasion where the two angels came to the Messenger of Allah, and sat at his head and sat at his foot. There's another narration where the Prophet ﷺ was sick and Jibreel came. He says, and he came to the Prophet ﷺ, and he said that the dua, Bismillahi arqiq, min kulli ma yudik, to the end of the narration. Right. When the Messenger of Allah ﷺ was affected by magic, and we said the correct position is to believe he was affected in his what? He was affected in his body. That's important to know. You're going to need that refutation in the future, due to the fact that there are people out there that try to say the reason why, especially from the Shia, who try to now speak ill about the revelation to say that the Messenger of Allah is affected by magic in the affairs of wahy, which is extremely dangerous to have that type of what? Belief. So the Messenger of Allah ﷺ was affected in the aspect of his body, not in his mind, and especially not in the affairs of revelation. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? Fine. The narration which says when the Messenger of Allah was afflicted by magic, he says in the narration, describing the type of spell that the individual Libid ibn al-A'sam that he did, he said, fi musht, or fi mushaqa, or mushaqa, fi juffi, tala'ati, nakhal, fi bi'li kab, as it says in the narration. I think it said, fi tala'ati, nakhli dhakar, fi bi'li kab. He says in the musht, there was like a comb, where you utilize certain parts of the hairs, and that it was put around some type of what? Nakhal, or some type of ball with which it was raveled, and it was thrown inside of a what? A well. The point of the matter is, if you notice in the narration, Aisha said, هل تنشرت يا رسول الله? Do you use nushra? هل تنشرت يا رسول الله؟ قال لا فقد عافاني ربي. He says, as for فأما أنا فقد عافاني ربي. As for me, my Lord has cured me. So my Lord has what? Cured me. Here in this narration, the magic was not what? They did not call the Yahudi to the Jew who did magic and told him to what? Remove the actual what? Magic from the well. And disperse the spell or stop the so-called spell that he did, which we'll discuss in a minute. Right. So what is the meaning of nushra here in this context? The Prophet ﷺ said it's from the actions of what? Shaitan. So here it's talking about what type of nushra? The nushra that was jahiliyyah. Jahiliyyah, meaning what they used to use from the ways of shaitan, meaning they used to come, bring another what? Another type of magic to cure another type of magic. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? That's what this meaning applies here. The Prophet ﷺ was maxed from the actions of shaitan. It's talking about when he utilized another what? Type of magic to cure another what? Type of magic. That's from the actions of who? That's from the actions of shaitan. Rather, you'll find during the times of Jahiliyyah, the shaitan would love to mislead the one who the magic was done upon, and then bring another individual to do the magic upon that what? Upon the person who's been afflicted. Then as a result of it, a person might say, for example, that it did benefit me. See, he used magic upon me to release another magic or another spell, and it worked. You'll find that they say that the shaitan would love that these people draw close to him by what he loves, based upon these type of acts. Then as a result of it, what? Then as a result of it, he will release the magic from the person afflicted. Because because both of them did an act that would draw close to what? To him. Which shows you, ya ma'ashar al-ikhwa, that in certain cases, just because something does take place of benefit, does not necessitate that the fact is actually legislated, nor is it what? Correct. Is it clear what I'm saying? Even though they might say, أَنَا جَرَّبْتُ هَذَا الشَّيْء وَانْتَفَعْتُ بِهِ, that I experienced it, I tried it, and what? It worked. So what you going to say now? Similar to that, of what we see, what happened with the Jews and of what? The Christians. And people that's upon Buddhism. You have people out there that say, well, I may supplicated to Buddha, and my supplication was answered. And people will say that I prayed to Jesus Christ, and my supplication was answered. Or that I prayed to what? And that I committed acts of polytheism, and it worked. You'll find that Ahl-Ilm say in regards to these answers, especially Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah, that he answered this. He says that a person could raise hands and do his hands and be upon disbelief or polytheism and call on other than Allah, Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, and the dua will agree with the qadr of what was preordained. Or maybe something perhaps of a type of what? Benefit would take place, and that was determined or destined for them to happen in that particular moment. Or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that actually answered the supplication. But He made them think that that which they called on of other than Allah answered them in order to increase them in their misguidance. But in actuality, it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that what? Answered their call. But however, in order to increase in their misguidance and increase in their level of disbelief, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala answers their supplication. So it's in actuality, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala answered them. But to mislead them and making them think what they're doing is correct, answering their supplication. And that's based upon the ayah where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in His book, وَذَرْنِي وَمَنْ يُكَذِّبُ بِهَذَا الْحَدِيثِ سَنَسْتَدْرِجُهُمْ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ وَأُمْلِي لَهُمْ إِنَّ كَيْدِي مَتِينٌ. He said, for verily, leave me for those who belie this hadith. We will set them up with a trap where they do not perceive. And we will keep giving them what they want, what they ask for. Meaning what they call on, what they want of pleasures and enjoyment, we'll keep giving it to them. To increase, to make them think what they're upon is what? Correct. That's what you'll find from the kuffar, from the non-Muslims. They'll say, how can I be hated with God when I have all these riches around me? I have all this money, so what I'm doing must be correct. What I'm doing is doing something right. Look at what I'm upon. Even though we know that doesn't mean absolutely what? Anything. Because the most righteous and the most beloved people were that lived in this dunya with the prophets and messengers, and a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them were what? Were poor. They were poor. Impoverished. Does that mean that they were hated and detested with Allah? Absolutely not. So the point we're trying to make here is, brothers and sisters, just because something of benefit takes place by an incorrect method does not justify the validity of it. Clear what I'm saying or not? Is it clear or not? So, no one should say just because the magic was released, even though we use magic to release it, and I benefited from it, now necessitates that that particular what? Affair now is permissible. Is it clear now? So that's the reason why we say that Nushra, or what was asked and what we're just talking about now, it says, Abdullah bin Mas'ud yakrahu dhalika kullah. So it says Imam Ahmed replied. So Imam Ahmed did not use other or something, of a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ here. He used the statement of the Sahaba. He used the statement of a Sahabi, one of the great Sahabi, Abdullah bin Mas'ud radiallahu anhu. He said that all of them used to what? Detest that. طيب. How do they translate that in your books, everyone? وَيَكْرَهُ هَذَا كُلَّهُ وَيَكْرَهُ هَذَا كُلَّهُ. Huh? Did they say detest or hated? Khata. Wrong. Ibn Mas'ud disliked. Brothers, this is another thing you have to learn. During the time of the past, especially with the time of the Salaf, the Mutaqaddimin, كراهة كانت تحمل على كراهة التحريم لا على كراهة التنزيه. ليست كراهة تنزيهية إنما هي كراهة تحريمية. You'll find that the origin of the word karaha was another word utilized for haram in its origin. Is it clear what I'm saying? In the time of the past. No doubt, the word karaha does break down into two categories. You have what they call karaha tahrim. The meaning of the word karaha, something that's detested, but it necessitates, it's impermissible. Tahrim, haram, harrama yuharrim, haram. What they call karahat al-tahrim, where something is impermissible. Then you have the second type of karaha, which is makruh. Let me use the words that's used amongst the people. The word makruh, makruhun. Makruh, when the time of the Salaf, if they mention it, depending on the context, the origin of the word makruh meant haram. Meant haram, meaning it was unlawful, it was impermissible. The second type of karaha is what they call karahat tanzihun, meaning something that's truly detested or disliked, which is the second type. Tanzihun. Tanzih means the one that he finds it repulsive, that he would just abstain from that thing. It's just detested. So that's the second type. You'll find that the people of these days and times, they think that when you say makruh, that it means what? It means the second category, not the first. A lot of people in these days think it's the second. When you, makruh means dislike, was hated, khalas, it's not haram. You understand, everyone? Depending on the context, especially in the usage during the time of the Salaf, the origin, unless there was a qareen, unless there was an indication that removed it from its ruling, to make now the word makruh mean that it's detested, the origin of it meant that it was what? Haram. Unless there was another indication that removed it from that ruling to the realm of it being disliked. Is it clear what I'm saying or not? No. Meaning it's unlawful. You cannot do it. Unlawful. You cannot do it. You understand what I'm saying? Right. That's an ayah in the book of Allah. It's Surah Al-Isra. Surah Al-Isra. I can't remember the number of the ayah right now. Well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, after He mentioned all the affairs about fornication and zina and killing and murder and stealing the wealth of an orphan to the end of it, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in His book, and also being arrogant, وَلَن تَمْشِي فِي الْأَرْضِ مَرَحًا إِنَّكَ لَن تَخْرِقَ الْأَرْضَ وَلَن تَبْلُغَ الْجِبَالَ طُولًا. This is the ayah right here. كُلُّ ذَلِكَ كَانَ سَيِّئُهُ عِنْدَ رَبِّكَ مَكْرُوهًا. After Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions Surah Al-Isra, it's on the third page of Surah Al-Isra. It's on the third page at the bottom of it. It's either the first or the second. It's either the second or the third page. Anyway, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned about killing your children out of poverty. Isn't that not haram? Killing your children out of poverty, or killing your children out of fear of poverty. Is there a difference? There is a difference. Killing your children out of fear that you're going to be what? Out of fear that you're going to be poor. Either before you got the wealth or after you got the wealth. Meaning I'm going to kill the child because I don't want to be impoverished. Or I killed the child after I have some money and I don't want to go back to being impoverished. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prohibited killing your children in both circumstances. Doesn't matter. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? Fine. So it says in the same context, He's made unlawful killing your children out of poverty or after you become rich, or after you have some wealth that you fear that you might become impoverished again. Then it says in the same context about murder and killing and bloodshed. Then it talks about fornication. Then it talks about money and oppressing the people in regards to business, trade, of not fulfilling the proper scale. There's certain products that are supposed to be weighed properly in order for one to now retain his or her haqq in those particular products that have to be weighed properly. At the end of the day, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says at the end of the ayah about arrogance. He says, وَلَا تَمْشِ فِي الْأَرْضِ مَرَحًا إِنَّكَ لَن تَخْرِقَ الْأَرْضَ وَلَن تَبْلُغَ الْجِبَالَ طُولًا كُلُّ ذَلِكَ كَانَ سَيِّئُهُ عِنْدَ رَبِّكَ مَكْرُوهًا. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about, now, speaking about affairs that you have no knowledge of. Notice it says in the ayah, all of these affairs are what? Detested with your Lord, are evil with your Lord, and they're makruh. Makruh means here haram. Makruh here means haram. It doesn't mean disliked. It means it's haram. Is it permissible to kill your child out of wedlock? Is it permissible to commit fornication? Is it permissible now to cheat the people by not weighing the product properly in order for one to receive their full or they do right in regards to what they have to pay and weighing it properly? All those affairs and being arrogant, is that halal? So that's the reason why this ayah was used as a what? As a proof to show that makruh comes in the form of meaning what? Muharram. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? Right. Here in this particular narration, Ibn Mas'ud said what? That he what? He detested all of that. Here means he deemed all of that to be what? Haram. It wasn't disliked, it was haram. So then now to use the shaitan in order to relieve of someone that's afflicted with magic is haram. To use some other magic in order, another magician to bring in, let that one release the magic of another magician. Right. As it goes in the Bukhari, it says on the authority of Qatada, about the Abbas Sadusi, that he said to Sa'id ibn Musayyib, and you know Sa'id ibn Musayyib, rahimahullah, was from the greatest of the tabi'een. He was from the fuqaha al-sab'ah. He was from the 7 scholars of fiqh of his time, in which all fatwa have returned back to him, which we'll discuss later who the fuqaha al-sab'ah is. Because you guys need to know who the fuqaha al-sab'ah are. We'll talk about that later. طيب. So now it says, Sa'id al-Musayyib said, رَجُلٌ بِهِ طِبْ. رَجُلٌ بِهِ طِبْ. طِبْ. طِبْ is a good thing. Right or wrong? A person, as we know those words, there were certain words in the Arabic language that it was used in what they call from the aspect of a fa'al. Fa'al, which is kind of like to hope for something good, is it would translate it as a good omen. That I'm going to get into when it comes the meaning of the word good omen. Doesn't mean what you think. Trust me. From those examples is this. Hoping for something of good, to being positive, basically. Fa'al in the Arabic language just also doesn't mean good omen. It means to also be optimistic. Also means to be optimistic about something or positive about something. For example, the word tib in the Arabic language is something good. Tib means what? Medical or medicine. Here in this context is used for someone who's mashur, sihr, means magic. Fine. You'll find in the Arabic language there are words that are utilized, but what is meant by it is its opposite. Out of hoping that that person would be what? Cured from that thing. So they will use the opposite of it for what they call min bab al-fa'al, from the aspect of them to be what? Optimistic that their situation will improve. For example, they'll say, so-and-so's maqboob. Matbub means that he's being cured. But matbub in the context here means what? Magic has been done on him. You'll find in the Arabic language, they'll say for someone who's sick, they'll say he's salim. Salim means that he's what? He's in sound state. Why do you use those words? Because of what? Because you find that they use words that the opposite is intended. I gave this example in another chapter. I gave this example. That you'll find that words are used, but what's intended by is its opposite, depending on the context. Hoping that the person is being optimistic that they will what? That the opposite will come as the result of it. This person was matbub. Now here's an example. It says he has some tlib with him. Tlib means something good. But however, the context, how is it used? How you translate it in your books? What does Sayyid ibn Musayyib say? He's under a spell. The word tlib, taught that. Tlib in the Arabic language is something good. Tlib means medicine. Someone being cured means an ilaj. It means a tip. It means some type of treatment. Good treatment. However, the word tlib was used in the place of the context of what? Magic. However, the Arab in their Arabic language used the opposite of a word from the aspect of being from the aspect of being optimistic about one situation. So he's mashur, but being optimistic, we say he's matbub. That he has tlib with him. Is it understood what I'm saying, or I need to repeat myself? For example, it's just like me saying in English, let's just use it in English. They say you're sick. Instead of saying sick, they'll say you're cured. Just to keep it simple. You're cured. Why are they saying you're cured? He says, no, he's good. He's sound. He's in sound state, even though he's sick. You're just saying that being from the aspect of being optimistic about your situation. You would eventually, inshallah, be cured. So in the same Arabic language, this is what they say. This is what they do. You'll find in certain instances, in certain contexts, they'll say for a certain person that's marid, they say he's salim. Exactly. That's it. No more, no less. So someone, he's marid, they'll say he's salim. Or a person that's ladir, they'll say he's salim. He was stung, he's salim. They use the opposite words in order to be just to be optimistic about the situation. Inshallah, he's going to be okay. Is it clear what I'm saying or not? Or do I need to repeat it? Inshallah, be optimistic and positive. That's from the aspect of a fa'al, and what is an exception in the chapter which is going to come, inshallah. That chapter you'll find is a fa'al. That's an aspect of what they call fa'al, which is a what? Which is a type, what they call it, translated as a good omen, but here it's understood as just being optimistic about a particular situation. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? Because we know in the Arabic language the word mutafa'il means what? It means to be optimistic. You'll find they say in the Arabic language, kun mutafa'ilan wa la takun mutasha'iman. Be optimistic, don't be what? Pessimistic. So they use the word fa'al. Kun mutafa'ilan. From the word fa'al. Wa la takun mutasha'iman. From the word shukn. Is it clear what I'm saying? Right. So here in this particular context, they say he has tlib with him. Tlib. So he has magic with him. But he's saying tlib for the aspect of hoping that he'll be what? Cured. I said it. Now you guys got it. So it says the word tlib. يُؤَخَّذُ عَنْ إِمْرَأَتِهِ. The word ukhda in the Arabic language, everyone, ukhda was a type of word that the person who's a magician, that these are the type of words they would use. Ukhda. Ukhda. Right? So the verb was made out of it. يُؤَخَّذُ عَنْ إِمْرَأَتِهِ. The man who was given or put a magical spell on to the point where he desired, or let's just say he lost the desire for his what? For his wife. to the point where he doesn't not want to be intimate with her. Basically, he had a spell casted upon him to the point he did not want to what? Draw close to his wife. How did he translate it in your books, out of curiosity? Just out of curiosity. What did he say? How did he translate it? Cold, sexually cold? He's cold-hearted? He's cold sexually. Really? Cold sexually. The meaning more or less, ala kulli hal. Al-muhim. What is understood, everyone, is that what? That he doesn't desire her anymore. Because of a spell that was casted upon him. That's the meaning of it. So basically, Sa'id al-Musayyib, as he says, there was a man that he had some sihr with him. يُؤَخَّذُ عَنْ إِمْرَأَتِهِ. He said now he did not desire his wife anymore because of the spell. It's basically just to keep it simple. Cold. Intimate. He says, is it permissible to do this or not? Now you have another statement from the great Imam. He said there's no problem with it. La ba'sa bihi. Verily what they intend by it is rectification. For verily of what benefits, then it has not been prohibited from that. What are we talking about here? What we're talking about here, he's talking about sihr being removed by other affairs, which are permissible, such as dua, such as a-ruqyah, a-shar'iyah, or reading an ayat in the book of Allah, ayat al-kursi, or ayat in the Quran. All that is what everyone permissible. That is what Sa'id ibn Musayyib was mentioning here in this context. That's what Sa'id ibn Musayyib was talking about here. Then you have the statement of Hasan, and we'll stop here inshallah, let's get late. وروي عن الحسن أنه قال لا يحل السحر إلا ساحر. That magic is not removed except by a magician. What is the meaning of this athar here? Meaning, in most cases, غالبا. Meaning, that if we was to look for the magician who did magic upon an individual, we would go find a magician, bring him and tell him, now that we caught you, especially if he's a Muslim man, it was the authorities. And the authorities caught the individual, found him, or her, usually in a lot of cases a woman that does magic, in a lot of cases. Especially in the Muslim world today, you'll find a lot of women do this. So now the authorities found the one who did magic. Found her, put her in, the authorities caught her and put her in custody. They would say, we have now caught you. We know what you did. You did this type of evil to this individual. So we would say, release your magic. Release it. Of course, some Ahl Ilm who say that this is permissible. We'll talk about this next class. They say we will tell the person who did the magician, free your magic from that individual, what you did. Take whatever you did, or whatever utensils, and break it. Stop it. And remove your magic from you harming that person. Is it permissible to do this or not? Some Ahl Ilm say yes. There's some other details, and I'll give it next class. Inshallah. But Ahl Ilm do say that this is permissible. As long as it's the person that actually did it. Not another individual that you're trying to utilize to release that other person's magic. And the details of which I'll talk about next class. Alright? Usually you use your phone to take notes today. But the phone will be loud. How did you know that? You didn't write that, you wrote that? Wow. Let me see that. I mean, I see that after class. The phone will be loud. Huh? What happened? You know how to write fast? We'll use that. Just bring your book. Just bring your book. Well, you was using my voice and then just recorded everything else. Oh, okay. I thought it was the voice signal thing. Fadal, Bilal. Optimistic. Optimistic means like you look forward to that person recovering, and you have a positive attitude or outlook about a situation. Like for example, Like for example, let's just say you're nervous about a test tomorrow in class. Like I'm just nervous. I'm just stressed out. And you would say, be optimistic. Just relax. You study, right? Yeah, relax. So it's a form of what? Being optimistic, being hopeful, relaxing. So that more than likely there will be a positive outlook or outcome of the situation. Understand? That's being optimistic. You understand? Or optimistic means pessimistic is someone that's always looking at the negative side of everything. Everything is negative. Oh, I can't do nothing right. Oh, I know I'm not going to make it. I know. I know it's never going to go my way. Oh, I just think it's just. Oh, I know something. It's not going to go through. I know my situation never goes through for me ever. That's pessimistic. Yes. Yeah. You understand? Follow. Absolutely. He's from the fuqaha, from the 7 great scholars of fiqh in Al-Medina. I'll talk about who the 7 are in the next class. I'll bring it, inshallah. Absolutely. Say he was a sahabi. I said. Oh. So I سورة القلم وذرني ومن يكذب بهذا الحديث سنستدرجهم من حيث لا يعلمون وأملي لهم إن كيدي متين نون والقلم وما يسطرون. سورة القلم. No, it's not قلم. I'm thinking علق. سورة القلم. أحسنت. It's on the last page of Surah Al-Qalam. So what I'm just, please, it's a habit. Sa'id. Absolutely. It's a major scholar. From the Fuqaha al-Sab'a. From the Fuqaha al-Sab'a. From the Fuqaha al-Sab'a in Medina. Fiqh. I'll talk about that next class. I'll bring all 7 because you guys need to know that. Who the 7? When you read books of hadith, he's from the fuqaha al-sab'a. You'll know the meaning of it. Well, I'll talk next class also who's considered the muqtideen of hadith. It's those things I got to touch on. You guys got to know that. Follow. I forgot to finish answering the Qurban question. The ayah is in Surah Al-Qalam. It is Surah Al-Qalam. It's the last page, the last ayah. Leave me for those who belie this hadith. We will set them up with a trap where they do not realize, and I will keep giving them what they want. Keep leading them on, leading them on. Give them more dunya, giving them more what they want of riches and wealth. Verily my plot is strong. So you see, based upon falsehood, even though upon falsehood, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala still gives them what they want, enjoyment, answering dua, answering their supplications, increasing in their riches and wealth, extravagance, everything they enjoy, even though it's upon something incorrect. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, verily my plan is strong. It's mighty. You found it? Yeah, Quran. Surah Al-Qalam. Find the form, somebody. Verse 44. Surah Al-Qalam, verse 44. That's it. Tafadhal. Abuhu. Oh, Abu Jahl, It doesn't matter, Abu Jahl, Abu Jahl, it doesn't matter. Absolutely, that goes under that. But no doubt in my mind. No doubt. The Ouija board, that was one of the most despicable, most filthy of spells involved in shayateen and games to the end of it. Of course they do. The Ouija board is the most akhbath, the most wicked of what? Most wicked, if not of games, out there. Calling on the shayateen and calling on people in order to find out certain affairs that are taking place of something that's of the unseen. No doubt. Without any hesitant reluctancy in that. Ouija board? I don't see what anyone or any Muslim would want to practice would be playing games on a Ouija board. Oh, what's somebody, Muslims that are doing that? Or numerology. Yeah, but that's connected with affairs of the unseen. The Ouija board is trying to find certain affairs of the unseen. They're moving certain things and making certain numbers and names. It's talking about affairs of the unseen, still connected. The affairs of Abu Jahl, what we say is permissible, has nothing to do with the unseen. Oh yeah, absolutely. The Ouija board is talking about connecting or communicating with the shayateen. That's basically what it's doing. The Ouija board is trying to establish a connection with the shayateen. Any Muslim out there want to establish a connection with the shayateen? Communication with the shayateen? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in his book, of course, that he commanded everyone to take him as an enemy. إِنَّمَا يَدْعُوا حِزْبَهُ لِيَكُونَ مِنْ أَصْحَابِ السَّعِيرِ. Verily, he commands his people to be from the inhabitants of hell. I do not want to, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded us to take him as an enemy. I don't want to establish communication with someone who's trying to make me go to the hellfire. You see everyone? I want to refuge from him as much as possible. Anything else? Father Suhail? Sighatun mubalagha. Oh, he wants to know the Arabic word. Sighatun mubalagha. I don't even know who it is. Just know that it means emphasis. That's it. Sighatun mubalagha. You really want to write that down? Sigha mubalagha? Any rate, tafaddal, anyone else? After class later, Suhail. Tafaddal, anything else? You know how you living the day out there? Today you got some nice questions. I was looking forward to your questions today. But enjoy. طيب وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى اله وصحبه. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك اشهد ان لا اله الا انت استغفرك واتوب اليك.